I'm joined today here on Primetime Local News with Tyler McMurchie, the media manager for SGI. Today, we're here to talk about the traffic safety spotlight for March. Now, this month's traffic safety spotlight is focusing on the real legal limit. So, Tyler, we'll start with that. What does that really mean?
Yeah, one of the things that we've heard a lot when you listen to any kind of stories in the news about impaired driving, or when people talk about it generally, is they talk about the legal limit, but they're often referring to 08, which is not actually the legal limit, it's the criminal code limit. But in Saskatchewan and in other provinces, there are provincial laws that prohibit driving with blood alcohol content under 08. And in Saskatchewan, it varies depending on whether you're an experienced driver or a learner driver, but the real legal limit is lower than 0.08. That's something we want people to know. So for an experienced driver, uh, there are consequences, administrative sanctions that begin once you reach 0.04. So between 0.04 and 0.08, you can get a license suspension, temporary, starting at 3 days, and escalating depending on how many offenses you've had. There's also a vehicle impoundment. One thing a lot of people don't know is that there's a requirement to take a weekend long driving without impairment course. So mandatory driver education. It's about 14 hours that you have to spend over the course of 2 days. And of course, there's also demerits under the Safe Driver Recognition Program. And so that's all as an experienced driver. So somebody who's not a learner or a novice, and somebody who's over the age of 21, over the age of 22, those are the consequences you face, even if you don't make it to 0.08 BAC.
Now, that's obviously when it comes to drinking alcohol. Behind the wheel, drugs are also, that's a non starter.
Yeah, in Saskatchewan, we have what's called zero tolerance for drug impaired driving. And the way that that's determined is police have a variety of tactics they can actually use. There's something that they've always had, which is a standardized field sobriety test, which many people might recognize from TV watching, following the pen like that, or walking a straight line. There's three different components of that test actually. Also, more recently, police have been given roadside oral fluid testers. So it's basically a swab that takes a sample of your saliva and determines whether somebody has been using cannabis. And depending on the machine, they can also detect other drugs as well. And these are machines that people can use, or that police can use, to determine whether a driver has recently used. There's a bit of a misconception among some people that they're worried that if I smoked cannabis last week or something like that, that it will pick it up. But no, it's really, they're calibrated to detect much more recent use than that. And police have to have a reason to suspect to even demand that test. On the other hand, when we're talking about alcohol, police also have a different device. It's called an ASD, an approved screening device. It's a handheld device that takes a quick breath sample. Under federal legislation change that happened in 2018, police don't need any reason to demand that of any driver they stop. They can demand that of any driver that they pull over, and because it's a very brief, quick breath test that only takes a few seconds.
So it seems like the overall message from this is something we've talked about before, and it's just don't drive while impaired.
Yeah, don't drive impaired, or and understanding that impairment starts at the first drink, and it starts right as soon as you begin to use any kind of impairing substance, whether it's cannabis or any other kind of illegal drug. And while there are criminal code limits that are can result in significant consequences, including a criminal code record and fines, there are also pretty serious consequences that result even before you reach those limits.
Now, something else I wanted to talk about is excessive vehicle noise. Now, SGI is currently working on a policy right now to kind of identify excessive vehicle noise. Can you talk a little bit about what that policy may look like?
Yeah, so excessive vehicle noise, and I think you know it when you hear it. If you're, maybe sitting on your back deck and you hear a motorcycle or a really loud car engine, a few blocks away, that's the kind of noise we're talking about. We're not saying that that vehicles shouldn't make noise or can't make noise. I mean, that's not realistic. But what SGI is doing is working on a policy to determine objectively and develop a standard to objectively determine how loud is too loud. Because right now, there are currently laws that pertain to excessive vehicle noise. You're not allowed to have a vehicle that creates excessive noise, essentially. But enforcement of it is somewhat subjective, kind of based on the discretion of the law enforcement officer. And so, what we want to do is kind of remove the guesswork for that, just both for law enforcement and for vehicle owners, so they can determine whether or not their vehicle is in compliance. So, this is something that's being worked on currently. It's not finalized yet, but SGI wanted to let people know that this is something that is happening. We understand that excessively loud vehicles can be disturbing to residents, particularly in residential areas or areas near. Many people live near busy thoroughfares. It's also distracting to other road users, so that does create a bit of a safety hazard as well. So, what we want people to understand is that we're not looking to eliminate vehicle noise entirely, but just the really really excessive loud vehicles that we want people to understand how loud is too loud.
All right, Tyler. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here and talking with us a little bit. It's great to connect and check in with SGI and see what's going on.
Always great to talk to you, Jace.